back in action. Part 1 of the Project Sky interview is linked below if you haven't checked it out already. However, today we dive into so much more. We talk about the travel within the world. Will there be fast travel? We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about the different weapon systems in the games, from bows and arrows, to crossbows to firearms, and so much more. This is part 2 of the Project Sky interview. Without further ado, it's time to dive into it, shall we?
The fourth question, I kind of went down a rabbit hole with it just because with RPGs, and especially open world RPGs, there is just so much that really goes into this specific question. The game's combat, its traveling mechanics, just the different gameplay mechanics themselves within the game. Can you kind of give me a brief overview of that, and then we'll kind of dive into a little bit more specific questions highlighting the different things?
Okay, yeah, sure. I can do that. So combat and world traveling to start with, yes?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so I could be really basic and just say that, it's live action combat that requires skill and preparation, but instead I'll just kind of say that combat encounters, I'm trying to put a bit more of a focus on emergent encounters of that sort there. So you'll encounter enemy patrols and such as you venture closer to the border where they might lie. In which case you can choose then to either hide, lay traps, or directly engage. You might also be forced to directly engage if your companion is particularly confident or foolhardy, you might say. But so it really is either going to be based around your reactions or your skillful preparation, in that you can if you know your environment and you properly prepare for an encounter, you can get away without taking any hits or anything of that sort there. But if you're also just skillful in your evasion and blocking and such, then you can also get out of it unscathed while having directly engaged the enemy. And leaving a fight without taking minimal injuries is relevant because of the medical system that is planned for the game. So injuries, it's not just going to be as easy as chugging a potion and then now your legs aren't broken anymore. If you take a serious injury, then it's going to have some lasting issues that may or may not make survival a lot harder depending on where you are in the world. And so it'll have some deeper ramifications like that.
Okay, so it really focuses on kind of a survival mechanic where you have to plan it out ahead of time before you just dive into the fight, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. And this level of I want to say caution will vary depending on where you are. So if you're in friendly territory, then you can afford to Leroy Jenkins your way into most fights, but otherwise, you'll probably want to play it a bit more safe.
Okay, and then with the traveling mechanics, talk to me about, is there a fast travel mechanic within the game? How is that going to work with it?
As far as whether or not there's fast travel, I'll say kind of. So minor side tangent, I've always found that fast travel in games that puts a focus on exploring the world and stuff like that, it's kind of counterintuitive, because you're essentially guaranteeing that players will only ever really travel through a location once. Because once they found that fast travel point there, then there's not many people who are gonna take the time to run through the same area again. But on the other hand, I'm also trying to prepare for the fact that the world's going to be large, and I don't want to have to force people to just walk from point A to point B the entirety of the game, because that sounds really frustrating. So the system that I have settled on is there are these teleportation constructs that were left behind throughout the world. In order to use, so when you walk up to them, you can teleport to any location that you have the GPS data of. And you gain this GPS data by first finding an empty GPS key, and then going to a teleporter and encoding that data there. So you have to reach, not only do you have to reach these locations in order to fast travel to them, which isn't really that groundbreaking of a mechanic, but these savable locations are also limited. You won't be able to fast travel to literally everywhere. You kind of have to strategize and pick and choose which ones are central enough that it'll get you where you want to, but still incentivize you to travel around the place a little bit on foot. So that's the fast travel. But then the rest of the actual travel stuff is the 7 different mounts and a few different vehicles and other sorts of mechanics that I'm sure I will mention later on.
And then kind of diving into the weapons again. Tell me about the gear itself, the weapons. As an RPG, I'm sure there is a crafting system within this game. So can you kind of
Yeah.
explain how immersive and how in depth that crafting system is, and what all you can really do with it?
So I'll first establish the different like weapon archetypes. So you've got you've got bows, crossbows, and firearms for your ranged weapons, and then for melee, you've got your one-handed, two-handed, and transforming weapons. And I guess transforming, it doesn't really, it's not specifically melee because it could be both, but yeah. So you got your one-handed and your two-handed melee weapons. So each of these different weapons are all broken down into different components. So for let's just say like a standard melee weapon, you've got your handle, you've got your guard, you've got your blade, and you've got your pommel. And you can pick the shape with like the model of the of this part. You can change the material and customize it in a couple of other different ways, and then you can create each individual part and then just kind of assemble your weapon. And this applies to every weapon type in the game. So like for firearms, for example, you can choose like the barrel, the stock, the body, the magazine, that sort of thing. And so this will lead to more personalized weapons, and it'll also dictate the move set and the damage types that I guess like that the weapon will inflict. I guess it's more relevant for melee weapons, like the different damage types, because obviously guns are all going to shoot bullets the same. But like if it's a blunt blade type, you're going to deal blunt damage and maybe a bit of cutting, depending on if it's just like a large thick blade or if it's actually like a mallet or something.
Yeah.
And this will be relevant because cutting, like slicing weapons will deteriorate if you're trying to smack a metal beast in the face with it, because you're not really going to cut it very much. But if it's blunt, then you're literally pounding the armor plating in, and so you're going to deal hell of a lot more damage. So you can specialize your weapons in that sense, and the fact that you can take your weapons apart and assemble them and so on and so forth. I'm really trying to allow people who, if they fall in love with a particular weapon type or just a weapon, they can get attached to it, and they won't have to worry about having to ditch it later on. That's always bugged me in games when I find a weapon that I really like, but because I've advanced further, now the numbers aren't as good, so now I have to throw it away for something else that I don't like, just so that I can actually kill things without spending half an hour slashing away at them. It occurred to me that we haven't mentioned like armor or anything yet.
Was that
a part of the question?
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question. Yeah, so perfect way to lead into it. Can you talk about the armor and the different ways that you can really customize and build and craft that?
So armor works identically to weapons, which I think is where my game's armor system starts to stray from like the usual ones seen, because everything is also based on a variety of different components. So like, for example, the armor for your left arm is broken down into the pauldron, the upper arm like guard, the forearm, and then like the glove. And so you can choose like the material, the model, and all the same sorts of things that you would with the weapon parts, and you can assemble like a unique piece of armor. And so, each armor obviously has its own like different defense values against the different damage types, but also against the elements. So like heat insulation, like cold, I want to say how well it disperses heat for warmer environments, how long it'll stay wet, which will be relevant for, if you're fighting anything that deals like electrical damage, you want to make sure that you don't stay soaked for very long or something of that sort,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how the armor will is created rather, and so you'll be discovering different blueprints and different types of armor as you become familiar with the crafting techniques of each tribe. So you'll basically get like different cultural sets that you can start to put together as you become more familiar with their traditions and such.
Okay. And one question that I actually two questions actually that I didn't have written down. The first one's going to be, when it comes to the firearms, a lot of different RPGs will fall onto a format where you can have multiple different kinds of projectiles or bullets. So you could have like electrical, or you could have water-based, or poison-based, whatever it may be. Is that something that Project Sky is going to have within it as well?
It absolutely will, but not necessarily for the bullets specifically. In fact, I'm glad that you mentioned that because that was something that I'd forgotten. I'd forgotten to really get into just earlier when I was talking about the weapons and like the different ranged ones and such.
Hmm.
So there are definitely different elemental like ammunition types, but what makes because I would like every weapon to be viable, and so like there should be a valid reason to pick a bow over a firearm, for example. So the bows are incredibly versatile. You can they're decently lightweight. Making ammunition for them is really easy, and it doesn't matter what kind of ammunition, as long as it's arrow shaped, you can fire it. So you've got your plasma arrows that will detonate in a big red explosion. You've got your shock arrows and a variety of other ones to come later on. But at the present moment, I've got shock and plasma because testing reasons.
Hmm.
But so that's bows. Crossbows are a little bit more complex. The maintenance for them is a little bit harder, I guess, because it's got a lot more like mechanical parts and stuff. But it too can fire a wide variety of different projectile types. So with firearms, however, and that's the problem with firearms because they should be really strong, but if they're too strong, I don't want people to just shit on everything like throughout the game the moment that they pick up a firearm. So instead, they are not only the hardest to maintain in terms of durability and ammunition because you can't just make bullets with stones and shit in your inventory.
Hmm.
You need to make sure that you have a decent supply of ammo before you even try to support one. But as you are fighting like machines and so on and so forth, sure, you'll shred anything that you run at the gun, but you're also going to basically guarantee that any components of value are now completely destroyed because you've just filled it with lead. So it's a bit of a trade-off between like the precision that a bow offers versus like the raw devastation that a rifle would.
Okay.
And just like the difficulty to maintain them and actually support them, I guess.
RPGs, especially a game like this that kind of blends a certain level of sci-fi and fantasy together, is there any kind of, I don't want to say magic, but any kind of like alchemy aspects to it, or I guess you could say investment or spell mechanics that you put into your weapons, runes, anything of that sort that's kind of a part of this game?
There's no magic in the game. Nothing that I will call magic anyway. Everything has some sort of in-world explanation. Hence the whole like GPS key system for the teleporters and stuff. Because like I need to, why can't the enemies just use the teleporter and kill all the good guys?
Yeah.
So just So there's always some sort of in-world explanation for stuff that happens. Like there's always a reason for why a specific machine is created. It's always grounded in some sort of science. Whether or not it's realistic or not is another question entirely, but there's a reason for it. Those sorts of like runes, I guess, which I guess you could sort of relate it to like gem slots in fantasy games or whatnot like that. So there are like those sorts of things there where it's like just raw stat increases without actually changing the behavior of the weapon. That's definitely a thing, and it's more like tech modifiers or something of that sort for your weapons, and equipment in general. So no magic, but definitely like little attachments like that you can slot into your gear.
Okay. And then before we move on, with so much of an emphasis on crafting and so many different things you can do with all of your different weapons and gear, how does your crafting system work specifically in game? Do you have to like go to a shop and get crafting? Can you do it yourself? Is there a skills tree in a sense where you can rank it up and do more and more advanced crafting in the field? Like, how exactly does that play out within the game?
So there are crafting stations, obviously. Like there's like the weapons bench and you got your armor bench and stuff. So at the start of the game, you will have to rely on stations that exist inside of tribal villages and stuff like that. And so like you'll be using facilities that exist inside of existing settlements and such. So when you're out in the field, however, it could become a bit of a ball ache to have to, trek all the way back to a village, and then just so you can, swap out the one damn part that you found in the field. And so there is a camping mechanic in the game. So you can place a campfire, construct a campfire, And then depending on how big it is, you have a radius where you can place stuff, where you can place stuff essentially, whether it's an equipment station for weapons, for armor, for stuff for your mounts, or storage and so on and so forth. Essentially, you can make these little what's the word? I don't want to call it a sanctuary because they're not always safe, but refugee camps are like it's a place to get some like respite essentially from traveling on the road. And these will persist until unless you pack it up and stuff like that. So as you're progressing further and further, you can make a series of little campsites that with supplies, so you make sure that you always have enough to finish your journey wherever you're going. So anyway, you can make these camps, and in these camps you can place these different crafting benches and such. So you're never going to need, you don't have to always worry about traveling all the way back to a village just to do some chores and stuff, I guess, for lack of a better word. But there is also a reason that you'd want to, because some tribes, like the Salen, are tinkerers. They are fantastic with all things engineering and all things mechanical. So if you have any advanced blueprints that you want a really high quality version of, then you'll go to a Salen village, you'll find a local tinkerer, and you'll say, hey, can you make me this? And then obviously it'll cost you more than just the materials because you're paying for their services, but you can contact local smiths in order to get high quality stuff done without assuming that you don't have the skills to do it yourself, because I recall that you also mentioned skill trees, and yeah, there's a lot of skill trees. Each tribe has 3 at least, because you're learning their culture and their ways of doing things, and so you'll be able to progress in each of their traditions, I guess, independently. So certain tribes will teach you more stuff about smithing and so on and so forth.
And there you have it. That is part 2 of our 3-part interview for Project Sky. Part 3 comes to you tomorrow. Now we're going to be diving into how development will be gearing up. We're going to be talking about the skills trees, because there's quite a few. We're going to be diving into just how players level up, and there's going to be so much more. Definitely make sure you're here for that. If you haven't already, like, comment, and subscribe, because you know what? There's more content on the way, and without you, it wouldn't be as special as it could be. So, until next time, I am Nick Lehner. This is The Side Quest. Stay gaming, stay curious, and I will see you next time. Take it easy.
I said I don't want to hang out with you anymore when this is over.
When this is what? You've got to finish your sentence. Over.
That's it. My sentence is over.
Your sentence is what, Brian?